Thank you so much. I again would invite Mr. Vivek Gupta to start the discussion with the members.
Thanks
you.
for inviting me. So, yeah, welcome again. Yeah, we'll appreciate if you can just take your drinks and probably be back on your tables. So that will really help us kickstart the discussion. Can we have some more mics here, please? So again, thanks again, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. So let me start the discussion with Sudeep, sitting right next to me. So I thought, let me start with him first. So we were having a very interesting discussion downstairs just before we started this session, and I wanted to start with you. What are the barriers you see for media companies for cloud adoption?
Sure. I think overall, what we do, I think I see things more from the commercial aspects and the value proposition. Typically, when we are expanding new infrastructure or setting up new applications or expanding new launches, one of the challenges, typically we see, if we are, expanding to new locations, tier 2, tier 3 locations. For us, I think getting a network capacity, available, the right network capacity available for the content to be available on time. So from the print perspective, getting it, papers are going to be available early morning, 6:40. It has to be there at everybody's house. So overall, the capacity is a big barrier, which we see, which I think probably it is getting there with the maturity. Maybe next 2-3 years is going to get better. But I think when we look at cloud, a lot of investments that we are doing currently, the commoditization that cloud brings into the picture, that needs to be probably done a little bit more than where we are right now. A lot of times when we are setting up new applications, we are, or maybe we are doing refreshes, we are tending to buy for, sizing for 5-year period, estimating a business growth of 15%, 20%, 25%, taking care of a lot of volatility, which right now could easily be taken care with the cloud, which can take care of all the surges that one may have in there. But that's not currently being done as much as we would want, because a lot of times there's a barrier of what we already have on-premise, the way we are working, the way we are set up, and moving it out to the cloud, how the current setup is going to be organized to that. So I think those are the key challenges that needs to be probably worked on.
So Jasbir, I may extend the same question to you, because you have been again a user for Amazon for quite some time. So how have you gone about mitigating some of the challenges that Sudeep was just talking about?
Hello. So yeah, the first challenge always is capacity planning. So hello. So the first challenge is always capacity planning. So I mean, you can go through your spreadsheet again and again and do your calculations, but it always goes down to some sort of guesswork. If our current infrastructure would handle it, let's say 2 months down the line, if the website goes well, there's going to be a lot more traffic, and what then? So that part, if it's taken care of by a cloud which is scalable, so that gives us a lot more freedom to concentrate on different things besides that's taken care of. So that's one of the first challenges. The other is, like, we being from the media broadcast company and shifting onto internet, it's totally different game altogether. A broadcast company, you just beam up your broadcast, it's going via satellite, and the end users are the audience is consuming it. But with internet, your site is there, but think of it as a different game, in the sense that think of it as a call center where each and every request you have to handle, you have to give a reply back. So each and every audience is directly connecting to you at that level. So there has to be thought about that. So we have to think about that. How much our audience is going to come, and their perceived feedback in the sense that how well your site performs goes a lot in how much return users are coming back to you. So that's one of the.
So great point by both Sudeep and Jasbir, and thanks for that. One of the point which was highlighted here, I was just taking note of it, is Sudeep talked about prioritizing for cloud as one of the takeaway, and second was the capacity planning being a major challenge when it comes to delivering various projects, thus impacting your business. And the advantage with a platform like Amazon is Amazon Web Services, you don't have to plan for the peak capacity. That's not the way you architect. And probably Jasbir and all of you who have experienced the AWS platform, you'll realize that you don't have to plan for peak capacity. You can go as you go up and down as your demand increases or decreases. So that's the huge advantage that the platform offers, along with ability for you to go mass with us at a very short period of time. So I'll move to Manish, and I'll extend the discussion about how can cloud be leveraged to meet ever increasing infrastructure demands of upstream media workflow scenarios such as content production, media delivery, etc.
Sure. So, we feel that cloud really can help us to plan and size our ever-growing traffic and the demand for more hardware or the resources. Primarily from the fact that initially, just to give you a little background, that why I feel we started with the co-location model, wherein we started with our own servers and we started putting the servers on the services on the individual servers. And we kept on expanding our infrastructure, but soon we realized that power costs are hitting us badly, which is close to 60% of our overall OPEX in the data center. So then we started virtualizing our own hardware, wherein we have already invested for 4 to 5 years, which kind of sustained for some more time. This is true for the organic growth, but our data consumption and the user behavior is little different for different segment of services. So we have primarily 3 different segments of services. One is the news segment, which is kind of write once and access many times, and at times we see surge due to any breaking news or special events, and some special events like election, budget, or any other such events, wherein we need to handle the surge in the load, and that is where we started using cloud in the traditional way of using it. So we started distributing our content onto the content distribution network. We started using our internal private cloud for elasticity purpose, wherein we kept on adding or removing the services as and when required. The second set of the service or the segment of data which we have is the market data, which is kind of write many times and continuously changing, and at the same time it is being read by the users. That is where the challenge was little different, because I can't put those content onto the content distribution network because the data is changing very fast. We started with kind of putting a large memory instances in our data center, but that was not kind of helping and sustaining. So we tried creating a serving stack on top of it, which is kind of in-memory databases, which is pulling the data from those stack, which is distributable across multiple data centers. And that is when we started leveraging the multiple cloud service provider. One is our private cloud, wherein we are distributing the service, and the same content we started distributing onto the public cloud like Amazon and likes of Amazon, which helped us to handle those kind of inorganic surge, especially when the market is opening, right? We see sudden surge of traffic coming in and everyone is accessing the content to see whether the market is going up, going down. And similarly, when the market is kind of closing, that's when we see a surge of traffic. So the public and private cloud mix by putting our own serving stack helped us to kind of handle that traffic. The third and the most complicated piece was the media delivery, which is everyone is talking about. For us also the challenge was different, wherein the content is to be rendered onto the multiple devices, into the multiple formats, into the multiple bitrate, adaptive bitrate, depending on the line speed, link speed, and the content is being generated continuously from the various sources, right? So for video on demand, we'll get the content from various sources. We need to curate the content. We need to transcode and write it onto a central storage, which can then be accessed by the various applications, whether it is the application on mobile, application on tablet, application onto the desktop. So we have been able to put kind of workflow onto that, and we have been able to transcode the content. The biggest piece wherein we are leveraging the cloud the most is on the storage side. Because on the philosophy of 2080, 20% of the content what we feel is accessed by 80% of the users. So we are putting recent content onto the cloud, 20% of the content, which probably when the users are coming and accessing, they get the content available closer to them and get the performance of whatever else is required. 80% of the content is still in our data center, and we feel that sooner or later, because of the various OpEx, and over and above that, what we feel is to get the super specialized skills manage that ever-growing storage in our own data center is going to be a challenge. If not now, maybe a couple of years down the line, because those are all very super specialized storage pieces which we are managing now, but soon we'll have to find out a way to kind of put that storage, or maybe 80-20, 20% onto our data center and 80% onto the cloud. So putting all those things together, we are trying to manage the cloud in a hybrid fashion, wherein some of the data is in our data center and some of the content in onto the public clouds like Amazon and likes of Amazon. One more very, I would say, a good use case of AWS cloud specific, we have done during election, wherein we got multiple X of traffic, 10X or probably more than that, and all the media companies got that kind of traffic. And that was unprecedented, right? You can't plan for the traffic because there is no previous data that what kind of traffic you are going to get. And we provisioned everything, right? So we used a lot of multiple CDNs, we distributed our content and everything. But the result tally, which is kind of dynamic and coming as a data feed to us, that continued to be in our data center. And the worry which we have was that if all the media companies started getting a lot of traffic, like the way we were getting, then the private ISPs or even the public ISPs interconnects will be choked up, and the consumers will not be able to access the content which is hosted in our data center. So we wanted to create a setup which is completely in parallel to our setup and outside India, so that even if the domestic links are choked up and the content is being served from the international, static content is being served from the international link, my data feeds are also available on one of the international data center from where the result feed can come, data feed can come. We could have gone for a dedicated setup, but it would have taken maybe more than 6 months. On Amazon, we have set up a parallel DR setup in less than a month's time. So we used a separate feed, we used separate serving stack, we used separate compute stack, we used S3 to store the data feed, we used messaging queue or service on top of it. And on top of everything, we used a cloud DNS, global traffic management service, which kept on checking the health of both the data centers, one in India and one in outside India. And depending on the availability, if at all there is any issue in availability in either of the data center, it routed the traffic to the right data center for content access. And we have been available during the election time 100% of the site, 100% of the time. So that is how we are trying to mix and match various pieces of cloud to make sure that the services are up and running and available to the customers on the various network seamlessly and maybe with a similar kind of experience.
That was a great use case. Thanks for that. I'm sure all of us would have been benefited with that. I'll extend the same question to Jasbir as well. You had a great, you have a great story around what happened with you during elections. So how did you really go about managing the traffic? Can we get some mic, please, here?
Hello. So yeah, so we had a very interactive partnership with AWS during the elections time, and so a couple of days before elections, so we had this. We applied for this IAM, which is their event management, event management services, where a whole lot of suddenly we had around 50-60 people looking at our setup, going through everything with us, and within a span of 6 hours we had so much input coming in. If you could try this to this, so much professional help within a span of 6 hours was just mind-boggling for us. We were and they had people with us sitting over at the time of the whole election day. We had a 24-hour link up with their professional help, and they did it across the globe. We started off with Sydney people and then migrated off to the US people, and so much support, so much detailed work was really overwhelming and really appreciated by us. And so we suddenly had a lot more people behind us looking at our infrastructure, looking at every detail, everything, made sure the load balancers were scaled up, made sure that everything was up to the mark to handle that peak traffic. And so that was a really amazing day for us too. And it just took a lot of load from us, and we were just concentrating and just watching the numbers go higher, and we were just hitting one milestone after another. So that was extremely good thing.
What is the kind of traffic that you handled that day? The election time? You have any stats on that to share with us?
I think we published those stats, but the numbers escape me right now. But on the server side, I can tell you we were 30x server within a span of 3 hours. So that was amazing. Watching those instances boot up, and handling those traffic, and that was something to just watch in your graph to go that way. So that was, but the numbers we published, those numbers, and I mean those were we'll say we were the biggest one on that day, but others would repute that. But the numbers were more than we expected, and we handled them beautifully. So it was really amazing to see that.
Yeah, that's an awesome story of the scalability that we were talking about, that you can scale up. So NDTV for in their example, and even for TV18, I'm sure it would have been the case when you've just scaled up. And probably after that event, as a media company, you don't need those many number of servers, and those servers, you won't be using those servers anymore, right?
Yeah. They were shut down the next day.
Yeah, so that's a huge value that can come to you, and it's not about it's not just about the cost. It's the agility which is there at your disposal to really leverage to enhance your business opportunity, because that business opportunity, like in case of elections, was there for 2 or 3 days time. That's where the peak business opportunity is there, and that's what means dollars or rupees or whatever we want to call.
It's it's more than dollars or rupees. It's also credibility and reputation
Correct.
online.
Correct.
You have to be up for that.
Yeah. Excellent. So moving on to Bikram, question to you is, we've been talking about different use cases. During the first panel, we had some amazing use cases. We had more use cases shared by the panel as of now. So are you able to expand on a few more use cases of cloud adoption across media companies, media entertainment companies across the globe, and in India specifically?
Sure. I want to start off by saying, we have not briefed any of the panelists, really, so I really want to thank all the panelists, Abhijay, Ajay, Manish, Jasbir, all the people who said good things about us. I really want to assure you that there's been no briefing session with the panelists. As a rule, when we participate in events, our general direction to the panelists are just say what you think is right. If you think we've helped you, say that. But if you think it's gone wrong somewhere, then say that. Which is why one of the questions that Vivek asked and stressed on was, what are the barriers that you saw? What are the challenges you faced? Because those challenges came with us, right? You actually used our service and then you ran into challenges. So we'd be happy to have the panelists share those challenges with you, so that when you move forward, you don't have to go through that. So that's the first point that I want to make. Coming to use case, I think honestly the panelists have spoken about so much. There's so much being discussed here that I'm not going to spend talk about that too much. What maybe a couple of them that I could talk of, which may be relevant to the audience here, given that it's a mix across different kinds of media companies. So if you look at somebody like Netflix, for example, Netflix is 25% of the traffic, internet traffic in the US. They run on the AWS platform. It's a massive infrastructure. You can imagine 25% of the internet traffic of the United States. They run their complete platform of us. So that's a great use case, right? And we've spoken about video on demand and web portals and streaming. So I'm not going to get onto that side because we've had enough discussions about that. I'm going to talk about some specific things. So analytics is a big thing we've seen. How do you use the analytics offerings from AWS? So for example, when you're talking about ad insertions, when you're talking about simple stuff like log stream analytics. Your users are coming in, you want to analyze the log streams, you want to look at what kind of users are coming, and then do you want to use that intelligence to go sell space to advertisers? If somebody is a fan of the football news or the cricket news and is under 25 years of age, then is he the right guy to go sell an insert to Nike or Adidas or whoever else there is? So the analytics piece is starting to become very big. So for example, if you look at somebody like Channel 4 in the UK, they have a great use case. Now, they are doing a lot of programming. There's a lot of content that they show. Now, what they've realized is that when people are watching TV, they also have a device in their hand. Right? So what can you do to monetize off that second screen? Right? So that's a great use case. So they've started building apps around their programs, which are actually helping them go monetize more and more content. Right, so that's a great use case that we see out there from an analytics perspective. Other use cases that we see out there in the media world is somebody like News Corp. They're one of the largest in the world. They have decided they're going all in. Right? It's not a rip and replace. You can't forklift and move. It's a 3-year strategy where over a period of 3 years, they've already moved 25% of their applications. But over a period of 3 years, there is a plan where they want to move everything into the cloud, the Amazon cloud. And that is something that we are seeing. Dow Jones, which is a part of that same group, they're talking about $100 million savings. So these are different use cases outside of the typical ones that we've discussed today, which are of course the key ones. But we're seeing lots happening in the media space, which is other than just streaming video on demand. Enterprise apps are moving, lock, stock and back. SAP migrations, let's move everything. So lots happening there.
Yes, and thanks for that. I'll just extend the use case that Vikram was talking about. So Dow Jones International had 40 data centers of their own. They are moving 3,000 applications and 34 data centers onto AWS. That will allow them to save $100 million. Obviously, it's a massive scale company. And the timeline for that is January of 2015. That's what. So you can find about this even if you go to YouTube. There are content available on this, or you can come to our websites, and there's lots of content available. It's a great transition we are seeing.
The other one is Contest. We recently put something up on YouTube. You should see that. It ends by then putting a sign on their data center saying for sale. So, I don't think that's going to happen. In the fullness of time, data centers will be there. I don't think data centers are going away. But I just think the ratio is going to flip.
Yeah.
Right? From where it is today, it's probably going to just flip over to say more is going to be on the cloud and then lesser on the data center. But that was a funny one. For sale. That's how they ended. They say for sale.
Yeah, that's an interesting video that we have seen. So, what we have seen is that there is a shift which is happening. Every company is moving at a different pace. Like we have a customer here in India called Banking in India. If you go to them, they were running SAP on-prem, and they choose to move their entire SAP environment, production environment onto us with help of a partner. So you practically become used for anything which is hardware-based. And hardware, when I say, I'm talking about say production hardware, that if you're doing a live coverage of something, there is some production hardware that you need. But right from editing and behind is what can be possibly done on us. So yeah, it's a very, very important platform from that perspective. So I just extend a question on a specific use case to Gautam. How can publishers maintain content quality while tackling the multi-screen challenges?
Hello. You know, if you look at you know, the content consumption and how it has kind of changed, right? I mean, for a traditional media like print, right? You know, the only mode of delivery was you know, circulation team, you get a guaranteed delivery, right? But the challenges in the digital world is completely different, right? Contrary to what people might want to think, that here we really need to think about how do you grow your audience and engagement, right? Because news is breaking throughout the day, and one of the things that people come to our website is for reading the top news, the op-eds, and the breaking news, right? So you need to understand, you know, your people are mobile, they're on multiple devices, they're on social networks, they're on Quora. I mean, they're everywhere, right? So you need to know, you know, what's important to you, what's happening now, and then use these various channels and the platforms in order to latch onto that, right? So, for example, I think I was talking to Sukriti from Jagran. I mean, they have a huge presence on social media, right? So I think we need to use social media well. We need to use the mobile platforms well. And if you think about from a different perspective, right? We're a country of 1.2 billion people, right? And I have a 2-year-old son, and you know, I don't have to teach him how to use an iPad, right? He learns intuitively, right? He knows the gestures. He knows. Just think, you know, when the 2-year-old becomes, you know, a 20-year-old, right? They're not going to be latching onto the traditional mode of, you know, consuming media, right? They're going to expect that, the news to follow them. It's like, you know, the news is getting more and more personalized, right? So today I go to Facebook and Facebook has become my news reader, right? Because based on what I've liked or based on what I read, these are more of what I, like, right? So that's a very good use cases, you know, where we can leverage something like Amazon, because they provide, you know, the computing at scale. I mean, just to take an analogy, right? You can think of computing like becoming more and more like utility, right? An electricity, right? Today, you get billed at the end of the month for the amount of units you have consumed. Today, computer has become like that, right? Computer has become an API. It's very different from the traditional world where you have to go through a capex cycle and provision your hardware for the peak capacity, like you mentioned. So it's a very different world, right? So if you don't know the demand, fine, right? So you just deploy your hardware and set up the auto scaling, and if demand comes, the auto scaling will take care of it for you, right? So, or if you think about, you know, the things that you brought about in terms of, you know, mining the user data, right? There is a ton of information which we can leverage to kind of, you know, probably build businesses around that. And you know, the industry term for that is big data, right? So you can take all of this clickstream data, spin up a Hadoop cluster on AWS or Amazon EMS services, and build predictive models out of it, right? So you can understand, you know, what the users are doing, both in the level of aggregate as well as, you know, the individual level, right? And then kind of feed those back real time into an application, right? So applications can become more smarter. Your ads can become more smarter, right? So you don't need to, for example, if you are a sports fan, you don't want to see a women's ad, right? So things like that, right? So I think we have probably seen the tip of the iceberg, right, in terms of what is possible in terms of digital. So I think the first good sign is that, you know, we are seeing we are seeing conversions happen, and the revenue and the monetization will soon follow, right? So I think today it's probably just a game of eyeballs, but once the eyeballs are there, the monetization will happen, right? So
Thanks for that. I agree to everything that you said. Couldn't agree more on when you were talking about your kid, that he knows how to play with the iPad. I have a very interesting story wherein one day my daughter actually walked in. I was working on my laptop, working something for my boss. So she come in and she says, "Okay, download these apps for me." And I said, I actually connected it to my laptop. I was trying to download some songs and stuff like that, and she actually came and said, "Oh, you are way too slow. Just move backwards. Let me show you how to download things on devices." So yeah, I
Flip
I
side there is that I'm just paying a bill of 4,000 rupees on my daughter's phone right this month. I bought her a 5C, and yeah, the bill shock is, I'm not yet over it. 4,000 rupees, and it's just adding up. So I'm trying to figure this one out. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So moving on to with the discussion, I'll go to Jasbir. What are the three most critical challenges that you were able to mitigate by leveraging AWS?
I'm a technical person, so I'll say sort of a technical things. AWS is Amazon Web Services. Web Services is APIs. APIs to me mean command line. So I, on my fingertips, have the power to have my infrastructure at my command. So I can scale them, scale down, have it automated, all that stuff. I don't even have to fill up a single form to do all that. So to me, that was a very big thing. Besides that, we started off with the AWS in 2009. There was just S3, no auto scaling, no ELBs also. And even then, AWS was much more, shifting to AWS was much more beneficial and nice to us to be with our hardware setup. So I being a sysadmin, I love my hardware. We recently, in 2009, we bought couple of Dell R710s, big beefy machines. Our main website was running on them, and suddenly one fine day in the month of May, something happened. It wasn't a load issue, it was just something happened. And it wasn't a traffic issue, it was just something happened. And it was just like everybody's standing behind me on my head, what's happening. So NDTV.com shifted to Amazon within a span of 3 hours. It was not a planned move. And it turned out to be a single line of code, which instead of hitting a external API, was hitting the web server itself again and again and again. But to mitigate that, and to be able to have your site live up and running again, and then have the capacity to add on servers until unless we found out the fault and fixed it up and your load went down. That was the day, and we haven't looked at those Dell R710s again. They're still there, idling in the data center. So that was the second use case, like shifting over your main site in a span of 3 years. The other, over the years, the interaction with AWS has been so much great. We never met a sales guy until 2 years of using AWS. And that too, a call from Singapore, "Hi, how are you doing?" It was Rick, and he said, "Okay, how are you doing? I know you are using AWS. I'm the sales guy, and I'm in Singapore. I'll be coming over next week to Delhi. So would you meet up with us?" Sure, fine. So he was like, "Okay." So that we had interaction with the engineers first, then with the salespeople. So, and that is a lot of for infrastructure guy. That means a lot. No sales crap. Whatever what you want, you interact with the team that is there. And the first interaction I remember was with these guys who had come over, and they were saying shift from instant storage to EBS based storage, EBS based instances. We were still on instant storage because whatever reasons, and so that was the first technical interaction with them. So they were explaining to us the advantage of the EBS. So that's way back, like before even we were on instance-based storage. And recently also during the Heartbleed thing, I mean, we were up for two days straight fixing everything, and we were confident we had we had upgraded all the stuff that was needed to be done, and we get a mail from Amazon Web Services that this particular instance is still vulnerable. So, I mean, so to that level of support that, okay, you missed this one particular instance, and then we went through okay, that was one old instance, smaller instance, which was still running a development environment. So that kind of support, that kind of feedback that AWS was giving us, plus the other benefit of AWS being all the different services are independent of each other in the sense that you can start using S3 irrespective of your servers being there in S3. So this is how we started off earlier also. We set up a social site, and we started using S3 first, and then we shifted our servers to Amazon. And again with CloudFront also, I believe you can use CloudFront irrespective of wherever your servers are. So that gives you a very playing level field in the media domain that even regional startups can have a very good, powerful CDN service at very reasonable rates, and are competing with the national level, because they don't need to have big purses to come online and be available all that time. I think I covered the 3 points, or you need more?
Those are all great examples. So one question that I just wanted to extend, and I get to hear this from a lot of customers. How much of control you really have on the instances that you're running? Like, do you really have control on AWS infrastructure that you are running for your business?
Yeah, you have, complete control over the infrastructure that you want. There's some mind shift that you have to go through. That earlier, I am a sysadmin, so sysadmin used to brag about the uptimes of our servers. Now you don't need to care about that, because the servers are up for a couple of hours and they're down. So on being on Amazon, if you have servers running more than for 6 months or so, there's something wrong that you're doing. So you need to be like, hasn't the demand come and gone or whatever? So that's one. About control over infrastructure, there might be some security issues for people to think about. They don't have security over their data or whatever. But with newer features like VPC, that's been covered also. You have much more better control over the network now. I think AWS with their innovations have been like pounding us with lots of features that were demanded by us, and they've taken care of all the security and whatever concerns were. So I've never felt that we don't have control over our.
Yeah, specifically, the reason I raise this point is because when we talk about adopting cloud, this at times becomes a major concern that do I really have control on the infra that I'm going to use, and then what kind of security measures that we have to implement, or the change management that you have to go through. As Jasbir was saying, it's a change of mindset, but you have absolute 100% control over the infrastructure that you are using for your own business use. And the security policy is exactly the same. You don't have to really to go through a major change management to adopt us. The security policies, you can deploy the same security policies on our infrastructure as you have been using currently. So there is not much of change that you actually go through beside the change of mindset as Jasbir was talking about. So I'll extend my question to Manish now. How cloud services help media and entertainment companies tackle challenges of complexity of 24/7 content delivery?
Sure. Yeah, so it was not only the capacity or the compute problem, which probably was the reason for, or we really need to worry about to run the operations 24/7. There are a lot of components involved when we are running a service, right from the DNS to compute and a lot of other small pieces. For example, data replication across the multiple data centers, because we are not only on cloud, as I told that we are running the hybrid solution, we have to replicate the data across multiple data centers. So we need to have the message queue services. We need to have the storage on both the sides, wherein I have the data replicated across both the data centers, plus the load balancers. So what we have been able to do with the cloud to use the complete ecosystem to make sure that the services are kind of load balanced in the active mode, plus the data consistency and the replication is there. So for example, on AWS, we are extensively using the message queue service for data replication. Some of the DNS GTM services which we are using to make sure that we keep on checking the health of our multiple deployments. We use multiple CDN, multiple networks, multiple data centers. Plus, of course, compute and the services are the key parts of running the operations 24/7. So by putting all those things in perspective, I think this helped us to run the operations 24/7 as far as the normal services are concerned. Plus, I will touch upon on some of the key benefits which we are able to get as far as the streaming is concerned, and I think earlier touched upon by Gautam also. See, what we have been observing that in the last few years, the consumption pattern is changing primarily because the devices are always on and always connected, number one. Number two, the people are simultaneously accessing the content on multiple devices. Take the example of you sitting in the office, you have your laptop open, you probably have your mobile also or tablet also open. You want to watch the same content on desktop or laptop, you want to watch the same content onto your tablet or iPhone. And when it comes to the handheld devices, the complexity is even more bigger, wherein the different formats are to be streamed on multiple devices. What we have been able to achieve putting some of these cloud deployments is to intelligently detect the device and render the content, right content to the right device. So from the user point of view, the experience is seamless, whether I am watching it onto the desktop, on my tablet, or onto my mobile. And that we have been able to achieve using the cloud services. Plus, cloud also helped us to streamline and reduce some of our internal workflow systems, especially from the video on demand and live streaming point of view also. So from the video on demand point of view, we use some of the cloud transcoding services and to render the content, especially when we are doing it on the multi-bit rate for the adaptive bit rate. So what we do, we just transcode our media into a multi-bit rate MP4 files and upload onto the cloud storage. And after that, it is the cloud who picks up the right content and create those segments for seamless delivery of the content, even on a jittery line wherein your line is fluctuating and the bandwidth is going up and down. So I think cloud really helped us to, on one side, make sure that our normal content delivery for the normal text file or the static pages are done by putting all those maybe the DNS or message queue systems or storage or compute in place is up and running 24/7. And on the other side, media streaming and the media delivery onto the various handheld devices and onto the desktop devices are handled intelligently and rendered seamlessly.
So, thanks for that. I'll extend a question to Gautam about what are the different ways in which you are trying to engage with your audience, online audience, and what are some of the best practices that you want to share?
Yeah, I think part of that is already been covered. So there are many ways, right? I mean, there is like I said. So we can't just depend on the traditional way of circulation to convey the news to our readers, right? So we can, for example, event-based, right? Like World Cup, for example, right? So you could come up with content to engage the audience and publish it to social media. You know, just start a discussion, right? I mean, one of our strengths is the opinion op-ed sections, right? I mean, so if we can, you know, we have the power to reach out to more audience if we make effective use of the various mediums that are available today. You know, there are other ways, like, you know, if you look at our archives, you know, I think we have a rich history of, I think, about probably more than 100 years of archives. And, you know, we could really come up with very innovative things on that, but then it's not very well structured, right? So just imagine, and if you can, like, look at what Netflix has done, right? They have taken these videos, they have kind of broken up into segments and tagged each and every one of them, right? Now, once you have this rich metadata about the content and at a level of granularity, maybe up to the level of minute or a few seconds, just imagine, you know, what you could do with that, right? I mean, and once those tags are indexed, you could come up with tons of, you know, interesting applications, kind of connect the bits together and create new content on top of that, right? And then you could tailor the content based on the device, right? I mean, when you're on an iPad, you can provide a very rich experience, you know, through use of photos and videos, for example, right? If you're on, you know, of course, on the web, you can have stories around it, right? You can, you know, engage with the audience on social media. So I think the opportunities are endless. It's probably limited to our own imagination, right? So I think one of the benefits that you know, Amazon provides is that it takes the worrying about infrastructure part away from you, right? Like things, I mean, they have kind of made it almost a, you know, standard, right? And you could kind of, you know, once you have taken that worry out of you, right, you could probably focus on things that are more important to you, right? Which is to grow your audience, to focus on monetization, to create new apps, to probably focus on more of user engagement and user-generated content, right? So I think the potential is almost endless, right? It's probably just limited by our own imagination, so to speak.
Excellent. Thanks for those inputs. Question to you, Bikram. Couple of things. While we have heard the panelists about some of the use cases that they are running, but we keep hearing different definitions of cloud. We keep hearing different ways, different companies talking about cloud. So my question to you is, how is AWS different, and how do you really stand out versus the other players, I would say?
Right. So, you know, great question. What we've been seeing is that over the last couple of years, you know what they say, lipstick on a pig. Pretty much painting everything out there and calling it cloud. I mean, everything is being recycled and called cloud. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and yeah, it's very easy to you know, misrepresent. But without getting into, you know, what other companies are doing, I think there's a couple of things that I do want to talk about from an AWS perspective. Right? The first is really experience. You know, there's no compression algorithm for experience. So, you know, there's no you know, you can't, what you've learned in 8 years by doing things at the scale at which we've done them, you can't really, you know, go out there and compress that experience, right? So that's one. The second, I think, is really about the breadth of the platform. Today, if you look at the number of services, you look at the depth of the platform. Most other platforms, you know, if you were to ask me, are where AWS was probably back in 2009. You know, that's probably where the others are. Innovation is another one. You know, Jasbir spoke about it. Key point. You know, he said they keep pounding us with innovation. In 2013, we released 280, you know, minor and major service releases. The year before that, it was about 160. The year before that was 80. So we're pretty much doubling it, and we're on track this year to, you know, beat last year. So you know, the pace at innovation is something that a lot of our customers, you know, appreciate. And last but not the least is this entire cultural thing, the customer obsession thing. Like I mentioned, all the panelists here spoke very highly about us, which, I really want to thank them for that. But it's about that customer experience. Because we are in a business where if you don't use us, you don't pay us. Right? If you didn't walk into this room and turn on the light, you would not pay your electricity bill. We are a similar service provider. If you don't use us, you don't pay us. So we are going to be in front of you, theoretically speaking, on a daily basis, saying, is all well? Are you okay? Are things working well? Is there something I can help you with? I think it's that cultural thing that's really driving, a lot of innovation with our customers. And lastly, I missed pricing out. I think that's the important piece there. Our goal is to drive pricing to the ground. We are, this has to become a utility-based pricing model. So we've dropped our pricing some 42 times, and we're going to continue to drop pricing. Storage was at about 8 cents a gig till 1st of April, where we dropped it to 3 cents a gig. That's like a 60+% drop. So we're going to continue to keep dropping prices because that's how this industry is going to innovate. You keep dropping prices, so your ability to innovate keeps becoming larger because your cost of failure becomes very low. So even if I fail, I know for a fact what am I going to lose. I want to try big data. $8 an hour for a 100-node cluster. I run it for 50 hours. What have I lost? $400. Right? Works great. If it doesn't, walk away. Right? So, that's really what segregates us from the others.
Some great points there. Just to sum up the discussion. One, the reason, probably one of the major reasons that I see for companies adopting cloud is the customer success. Vendors such as Amazon and partners such as Intelligrade, we are more and more aligned to your success. So if your project is not successful, you're not going to use us, you're not going to pay us, and if you're not paying us, you're not paying a service provider who's doing consulting on top of our platform, such as Intelligrade. So it's a great leverage. If you look at we are more and more involved. We have to be more and more involved into your success because otherwise we can't make money of it. Some of the things that Jasbir raised that they started using when we even did not have an office, so thanks for being a customer for so long. We are here. We have office in 5 cities in India as of now. We are in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, and Hyderabad. So we are here to better support us become as the country. We have invested in huge amount of resources. Interestingly, another thing that probably we did not touch upon, and I wanted to conclude the discussion by saying that is, we have a huge ecosystem, right? We have over 10,000 partners globally, which includes 3,000 partners. For you to, for someone like you to move onto cloud from a consulting standpoint or from a different technologies that you're consuming. So that's a huge leverage. That's a huge leverage for you because in most of the cases, either these partners have started providing their technology as a service, or else they are allowing the license portability, like in case of Microsoft, or even in case of Oracle. The entire Oracle stack, almost all of the entire Oracle stack is supported onto AWS, which is a good leverage because if you're using Oracle, you'll know that it is not supported in all the virtualized platforms. So it is supported on us, which is a great endorsement. So if you are already invested heavily into any specific technology, because of the ecosystem breadth that we have, you may not be required to change anything in specific. You can actually adopt us as a platform for deployment of that specific technology. So that's another huge leverage that I wanted to share. With that, I'll just end this session and probably open up the house for any questions if you may have. Can we pass on the mics, please? Thank you.
Hi, Jatinder this side. Some very interesting insights have been shared. Especially just wanted to understand, like you said, that video files are obviously growing exponentially, then the usage of analytics and intelligence tools, and with, right now OTT players are also coming into picture. They are also pushing for content at their own end. Do you think somehow the security needs, even though we have been discussing about security, that it is no more a threat, but going forward, do you think there might be a new kind of security loophole which might emerge, and are vendors like Amazon ready to tackle those kind of issues? Any?
You?
You know, my personal view, there's nothing that says 100% secure. You can't put a stamp on anything saying 100% secure, simply because there are bad people out there who will do bad things. What you have to do is constantly upgrade yourself and make sure that you're protected. Right? Specifically coming to what Amazon does from a security perspective, we work on something known as the shared security model, where below the hypervisor is our responsibility, above the hypervisor is yours. So you are building secure applications, and we are ensuring the infrastructure that you're using for that is secure. Now this would mean security at a physical level. For example, I'm not allowed into our data centers, and neither would my boss, who's the MD of APAC, he's not allowed, or neither would his boss, who's the global head of the sales and marketing team, he's not allowed. So we're not allowed into the data center simply because it's not our job role to go into those data centers. From there, looking at segregation at the application layer, the network layer, the storage layer, looking at those segregations, and then you're coming to the certifications. So all the required certifications, AS70, ISO 27000, PCI compliance, all of that is then taken care of. But finally, it's about what you're doing as best practices, right? The first, like Vivek mentioned, there's nothing at odds which says that you can't use your existing storage security practices and just extend them in the cloud. So it's just extendable. You can just put them out there. But more importantly, our advice to all our customers is encrypt your sensitive data. Encrypt what you're putting out there, because what that ensures is that if somebody doesn't have the keys to access that data, they can't access that data, right? So this is, like I said, a shared security model. Well, we do what we do on our end. You have to ensure that you follow the best practices. And like I said, there's nothing which is 100% secure. You have to constantly keep upgrading yourself. Bad things will happen. How do you ensure you're not a part of the, what they call the bad effects which happen with bad things? Right?
So if I may just add on to that, even our CISO is not allowed into the data centers. So Bikram was just generally talking about the sales organization, but CISO, who's the Chief Information Security Officer of our organization, he's even not allowed into the data center. So there is a website, ablers.amazon.com/security. There are tons of material that we have shared with on security aspect. We have security white papers available there. We are very, very eager and will be very open in coming and engaging with you onto security specific discussion upfront to answer any of the queries that you may have. But if you look at the two things that we really invest on as an organization is security and operational excellence. Those are the two things which is keeping the lights on for us. That is the core business for us. IaaS or the services that we sell becomes a byproduct of what we are doing, which is security and operational excellence. Because that's how we are doing innovation. That's how we are making sure that you are able to run your business on our platform. We have another question on this table, gentleman out there.
In the report that was prepared by CIA, a couple of years back, Indian Cloud Revolution report, there they have claimed that the way India bypassed the networking hassles by simply leapfrogging into the mobiles, the same way maybe the cloud migration would happen and India may bypass the kind of IT infrastructure hassle they have. So how soon do you think this is going to happen in India, Mr. Bedi?
A lot of answers for that question lie in how soon we're going to have infrastructure which is going to be able to support these kind of leapfrogs. So if you look at 3G, I mean, I come from a telecom background. I've spent a couple of years in telecom, so I can talk a little bit about that. If you look at 3G networks, I think we're almost there, and now we're looking at 4G and LTE rollouts. If as a country, given we have a new stable government in place, who's talking of some very forward-thinking ideas. If as a country, we want to continue to invest in that infrastructure, then I think what you're saying and what CII has envisioned is absolutely possible, right? If we can get networks out there which can support access from villages of Assam and Meghalaya and Mizoram, then absolutely, why not? What stops them buying off a Snapdeal or an Amazon.com or a Flipkart? What stops them from doing that? And so I personally believe, yes, it's possible. I just think that we need the government to continue down the roadmap that they're thinking of and continue to do the investments. That's my point, and that's my opinion.
So moving on to this table, gentleman here had a question. You can pass the mic to him.
I am one of your customers using some of your services in daily basis. But what I'm seeing is there are a lot of limitations which is attached to your services. Basically, there are a lot of improvements is required. I want to pass that message to the technical team so that they implement those solutions. Because when I compare your CloudFront with the Akamai CloudFront, I see a lot of issues where the improvements are required. I see when I use S3, there are a lot of features which is missing, which I think as a technical person I should have those features in hand so that it could be more useful for me actually, and for others to use actually. So how can I pass those messages to your team so that those features and the functionality is inbuilt going forward?
Thanks for that feedback, really appreciate it. So how can you pass the message? The technical team is all standing at the back of the room, so you can interact with them during when we close out. Just want to highlight that there's a couple of key areas that one is of course the innovation. So it's feedback like this when it comes to us. We go back to our engineering teams and give them that feedback. And basis, of course, there are priority queues depending on which customer is asking for what. But yeah, priority queues are there, and then we build those features in. Secondly, also a lot of times we find, you'll have to excuse me. You'll have to excuse me. I'm talking to the gentleman. Yeah. So a lot of times what we find is that the functionality of our services is actually so wide that it's not completely understood. So, what might help, I don't know if you're in touch with our technical team, but if you do that, and if probably a session, might help getting a better understanding of what your use case is, and then how we can actually, help with the services and the current set of features. Because most times we find that, the customer may not be fully aware of the complete capability of the product. So that's also something that we find. But do talk to the team, they're all behind. Have a chat with them, give your feedback, absolutely.
So just to add on what Bikram was saying, I don't remember the exact URL, but just to create a scale, you do have ways to put in your request onto us. I just don't remember the URL for that, so that the engineering team eventually looks at that website. It's an open website. That's what.
AWS forums.
AWS
Forums.
AWS forums. So that's where you can put this request directly. That is followed very, very, very closely by our engineering teams. That's one. Second thing is, if you're seeing some specific gaps, there are a lot of our partners who have built some specific add-ons on top of our platform, which may be able to then help address your need. Specifically with CloudFront, right after I close, I'll just get the Amazon team introduced as well to all of you, so that you know who they are and you can talk to them as well. Can we?
This question to Mr. Bedi. Why you don't guarantee service level agreement with your customer?
We actually do. We have SLAs with each service. So we actually do guarantee service level
On
agreement.
availability?
On availability, yes. We actually do. So with EC2, S3, etc. So so let me break that question up. There's a broad platform, and that broad platform by service has availability levels. So there are SLAs that we guarantee. It's not audible? Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. So we have a broad platform which is used by these hundreds and thousands of users. So there is a broad platform where every service has a certain availability level, right? So EC2, S3, etc. They would 99.95, 99.99. Durability, SLAs are there. So that's one part of it. But then what starts to happen is customers come to us and say, listen, I need a better response time. I need to make sure that if I'm having an issue, then somebody needs to work with me. Now we plug that gap with a support service. So we have a support service that we offer where you can actually subscribe to different kinds of supports. And those supports those support teams, like Jasbir mentioned, they can work with you to make sure that your SLA requirements are suitably met. Partners can, of course, IntelliGrape would also be able to do the same thing, where they would be able to work a support offering around what you have. But broadly by service, yes, we do have SLAs. I'm happy to share that one-on-one with you as a discussion.